Hello, Sophie. Thank you very much for being with us today.
Hello. Thank you for having me.
The challenge of this edition of a sports business meeting is to rethink the sports business. Which areas do you think are the best for football to focus on thinking about its future?
Well, it's a broad question, and I think I would retain three areas. One is infrastructures, keeping investing in infrastructures, both for the teams, both for how you welcome fans in stadium, and there is a lot to do around that and what is around the stadium. So I believe there is a lot of possibility also thanks to interactivity and all the digital possibilities. So a lot of innovations are to be expected in this area. Second is connecting with fans beyond the match day. So how do you keep your fans involved and get them to think about the team and be the partner of the club? And the third one, I think, which is a very important one, and especially for the future, is the impact that you can have as a club, as a sports organization, in the community around you, and more broadly in the environment. And so I think that's the three areas where there is a focus in the coming years. For women's football, if we were to talk about women's football, I think that's even more true, actually, especially on the infrastructure side, where there is a lot to do. A lot. I mean, there is, I don't have in mind that there is even one stadium built for women. And maybe it's a question that we could address.
You actually mentioned some of them, drawing audiences, connecting with fans, attracting new generations. Which ones do you think are the long-term challenges for the football business?
Well, on this question, I think I would mainly answer regarding women's football. And I think the main challenge for women's football, whether short-term or long-term, is to attract more fans from all generations, I would say. We know that women's sports fans, and we know that because surveys demonstrated, they are probably the most engaged fans because they have to make a lot of efforts to get the information, to be in relationship with that team. So there are like digital native people. They know how to connect with their players, with the athletes they support. And I mean, we have to grow this fan base. We have to attract the fans of one day. There is no doubt that when games are broadcasted on these channels, the audience is there. We can see that in the United States when the games are broadcasted on CBS or in France for the World Cup. There was incredible high audience, and that's what we need to do, actually, to attract more fans. And today, actually, the idea that we cannot wait from others to do that. So I think that women's sports will remain for a couple more years an investment-driven business. The clubs and organizations have to invest, have to do a part of the job, and build assets, invest in players, and do fantastic performance and that will help. And then we have to hope that some media will support the effort from clubs. And I would like to, we're talking about Spain. I would like to mention that when preparing this interview, I was looking at the different websites, and I was amazed to see that Marca, when they present the football, they have first La Liga, and then they have the Iberdrola Liga. And that's unique, because usually when you go at sports websites, you get all the leagues, all the men's league, and then after scrolling 3 pages and clicking 10 times, you get women's football. And so Marca, I think, is a good example of what would be really helpful.
That's nice. So the problem, to put it down, is it's visibility, right? It's do not have the same exposure maybe as men's football.
Well, basically, I think the media space for women is 4% in sports. It's 96% for men and 4% for women all around the world. So, at some point, it's a miracle that we have fans in stadiums for women's games.
You actually at OL, you are a reference in Europe. Why did you decide to promote women's football when no one else was doing that?
Well, we need to pay tribute to Jean-Michel Aulas, president of OL. It was his vision, his decision to invest in women's football at a time where no one did it. You're right. I think it's his personal engagement for equality. It's also his conviction that football is for everyone and for all. And then it's also his entrepreneur vision that it's a smart project to invest in. So that's probably the 3 reasons for which made the decision to invest in women's football. And I think it did it with all the energy and the same way that it did with the men. So building the infrastructures, investing in the academy, and doing everything he could to progressively give the same tools for the women's team than for the men's team. And the results have been very, extraordinary till now. So, and now the competition is harder because other clubs are following. So that's a good news, of course. And we are happy to have inspired other clubs to make this investment, which is needed and which has a lot of value, I think.
That was actually my next question. How has it evolved since you started? Do you see a greater commitment from big men's clubs?
Yes. First, I see much more commitment from big clubs in Europe. I think that some countries have made decisions. I think of England. I think of Spain. I read that the La Liga was recognized as a professional league quite recently, but it was like an apology to do that so late. There was also, I think, a 20 million investment for women's sports for women's football announced a couple of years ago in Spain. So we see that also at the UEFA and FIFA level, now women's football is visible. And the World Cup in France probably changed the game on that. I think, the audience were huge, stadiums were full, games were fantastic, and hopefully COVID didn't kill that trend. So I think something has started really, and I think a lot of more investors are ready to invest in women's football.
Mm-hmm. You mentioned before the case of success of the women's football in the US. What can we learn from them?
Well, what we can learn is that to get to some level of success, you have to invest, and you have to create an attractive competition, which means that it's not one or two clubs, it's more. And having some kind of parity in the competition makes it very attractive. And we had last week our last regular season games in the US. And basically, we didn't know who would qualify for the playoffs. I mean, it was the last day, and it was unclear how the table would be. And so that was very interesting, and I think fans were excited about that. So, but it requires a lot of investment from owners to get to a point where you create this visibility. But there is a lot to do. I mean, I think Europe is doing things brilliantly, and US has another model, which is a closed league model, so where investment can be rewarded by the valuation of the team. So it's very different models actually.
In Spain, as you said, it's in a great growing moment. What recommendations would you give?
Keep pushing, keep investing, and we hope to compete with you in the Champions League every year. So it's a long-term thing. It's we started in 2004, so everyone needs to keep pushing and keep investing. That's the main message, I would say.
Talking about investment, how would you sell women's football to sponsors? What are the main, the appeal of women's football can have for sponsors?
Well, when we started, we had more partners, and now we have major brands like MasterCard, Alibaba. I mean, that's international brands supporting our women's team, Starbucks in the US. And I think there is something different with women's football, women's sports in general. Probably it's linked to what the athletes propose. I mean, we have players that are incredibly conscious of their environment. They know that they have to pave the way for the next ones. They are ready to invest a lot of their time and intelligence in the relationship they have with sponsors. So they create a different way of interacting with the sponsors and with the brands. And I think the brands recognize that there is value. I would say that, top players on the men's side are incredible athletes and incredible leaders or heroes, but they live a different life. But our athletes on the women's side, they are like real life role models. They live their sport, but I know that they have to.
Isn't that less aspirational somehow?
Sorry, I didn't get your question.
Yeah, isn't that less aspirational for fans?
It is, yes. And I mean, these players, they are incredibly engaged, and they also have to build their life after sports. So I think that's something they can share. And I mean, there is clearly not enough money in the sports today for women to build their entire life with their sports careers. So they have this consciousness of what they have to achieve during their sports life and after. So I think that has a lot of value.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. And what can we do to improve the value of women's football for sponsors?
Well, again, it's all question of investment and supporting the trend and fighting for equality and showing that, I mean, it's just as fantastic as what men do. And then I think there is probably a lot of things that we could do regarding the competition side. I would dream of a clubs World Cup. I would dream of a kind of, Riders' Cup between European and US clubs. I think that would be a tremendous competition and really attractive for fans. And so I think that would be the way to develop the attractivity and offer different platforms to sponsors. So there is a lot to do on that. I think the elite clubs are the locomotive for the entire sport and need to be pushed forward. So when men's teams invest in women's sports, I think that's a brilliant move because they can use their huge platform to support that. And when you start showing that you do that, that attracts the other ones to support the trend.
And what is keeping us from having already these kind of competitions, like the ones you mentioned?
Well, there is already the UEFA Champions League, and the new formula is very attractive, and we can see that in the first phase there are really brilliant games, and we need more of that. Actually, we need more high quality games. We need to have these fights every weekend, and that's what I mentioned with the NWSL, where we do have this kind of competition every weekend.
Mm-hmm. You mentioned before that women's football is already very interesting for fans. People want to watch it. It's just we don't usually have the visibility. But what can we do to make it even more attractive to fans, to gather, a greater fan base?
Well, I think the new competitions could be a way. And I think the media support should be the other drivers, and besides the investment from clubs and organizations. I mean, we need to get the media understand that they have to make a place for women's sports. I'm pretty sure that, well, it's more than pretty sure. I'm convinced that they will be rewarded for that. If they offer some of their space for women's sports, they will be rewarded for that because the game is brilliant and fans are looking for that. Mm-hmm. And the values of equality and the quality of the athletes make that you have a lot to say about women's sports, women's football in particular.
Mm-hmm. Can something be done from the institutions, like the public institutions, to promote the sport?
well, what I expect from all institutions is to promote equality, and that should be at all levels until it's reality in the facts, not reality in what is written. And there is a huge difference in what is written and what is reality. And so that's what I would expect from institutions. Then I think we need to be honest also about the economic side. So it can take time, but there has to be a strong movement in favor of equality and of the development of sports. And it's a huge thing, actually, to be able to promote role models for little girls. And I mean, I'm pretty sure that it's fantastic to see Ada Gerberg or others on the field, and I'm sure that little girls can have brilliant eyes watching her and playing in their garden and say, I'm Ada, not I'm Cristiano. I mean, Cristiano is brilliant too, but Ada is great.
Sure. Actually, that was my last question, because we need fans, but we also need players. What can we do to promote young girls to play football, to enjoy this sport as well?
Well, that's all about it. It starts at, I mean, depending on the countries, it starts in clubs or at school, or I think that one of the most important messages, you can do whatever you want. And all little girls have to know that. And in Europe, we have the chance to be in countries where actually you can do that. It's not the case everywhere in the world. So we need to take this chance and show that little girls can make that choice. And in terms of institutions and thinking of the crisis we just went through in the NWSL, the responsibility of institutions and organizations is to organize the sports as a safe space, so that little girls, boys, everyone can do that for their passion or just for practicing, but in a safe way.
Wonderful. I am afraid we've run out of time. It's been a pleasure having you here. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thanks a lot.